From prominent desert trails where it said high-profile cult activity has opened portals to the other side, to forested waterfall treks where restless spirits resulting from great tragedies still roam. Are you ready for our second list of picks for some of the most haunted hikes in the United States? Number 5. Sarver Hollow Shelter. Sarver Hollow Shelter, located along the Appalachian Trail between Roanoke and Blacksburg in Virginia, is a historic home-turned-hiking shelter with routes to and fro ranging from 2.5 miles up to the entirety of the Greater Trail's expanse being 2,200 miles. Historically, through the 1850s, one Henry Sarver would construct a two-story cabin on site, at which he and his family would fashion a life, until sadly being forced elsewhere by the Great Depression. In 1937, the Appalachian Trail was officially completed, with the old Sarver place acting as a makeshift shelter for hikers. Over time, it would dilapidate, and through the 1990s, its roof would collapse, leaving it completely unusable. In 2002, a replacement structure was built adjacent to the original, as a pit stop on the 22-mile stretch between the aforementioned town sites. This more modern shelter remains in use to this day, with ruins of the original cabin still easily viewable, alongside an old family cemetery. Chillingly, many of the Sarver children died young, with one of the graveyard's only legible headstones placing one Mary Sarver, who passed at the age of 9 in 1909. Local legend tells the trail, especially right around the shelter, is haunted by the spirits of the Sarver family, as well as by the souls of various hikers and others who have perished near, and those who've explored about have reported hearing phantom footsteps from behind when no one else is present, disembodied voices, and the sounds of children playing from right next to the old ruins. Half-formed silhouettes are often captured in photographs, shadowy figures have been known to stalk the living, and unfamiliar individuals have been spied surrounding the shelter only to seemingly vanish into thin air. Lastly, and rather disturbingly, campers have recounted being shaken awake by an unseen figure that's since been dubbed George. Number 4. Warm Springs Canyon Road. Warm Springs Canyon Road, located within Death Valley National Park in California, is a 15.4-mile challenging backcountry trail and road, accessible only to off-road capable vehicles and good old-fashioned legs, that leads to the infamous Barker Ranch, a site recognized for its hosting of Charles Manson and his Manson family. Historically, from as early as 7000 BCE, various tribes native to the region would utilize this area, the most recent of which may have been the Timbisha Shoshone circa 1000 CE. Following the start of the California Gold Rush in 1848, surrounding lands would welcome in large influxes of European settlers seeking fortune, and through the 19th and early 20th centuries, a number of short-lived boom towns would sprout up. Through the 1920s, tourism to the region would drastically increase, resulting in the formation of several early resorts and parks. And in 1933, Death Valley National Monument was officially established. For a time, from 1968 to 1969, the Barker Ranch was occupied by the notorious Manson family. However, their activities would garner too much attention and would result in their capture on the property. The park's grounds were expanded one final time in 1994 before they were declared a national park and remain open to this day. Over its lengthy existence, a number of stories surrounding local hauntings have surfaced, and those who have braved Warm Springs Canyon Road have reported orbs visible to the naked eye, half-formed silhouettes in the backgrounds of photographs, shadowy figures that slink about, full-bodied apparitions, and instances in which GPS devices have led their users dangerously astray. Following his release from prison in 1967, Manson, Charles Manson would begin attracting cult followers, some of which believed him the actual manifestation of Jesus Christ, and by the time of his subsequent arrest, Manson and said followers were convicted of no less than 9 murders, though many suspect countless others remain unrecognized. Supporting this theory, in 2008, forensics teams would unearth several possible grave sites near the ranch. However, no physical remains were actually discovered, and in 2009, suspiciously, the ranch would catch fire and burn. Those who have neared the ranch have reported extreme cold spots, random dizzy spells, and the feeling of being watched by someone or something evil. Number 3. Bish Falls Trail. Bish Falls Trail, located within Bish Falls State Park in the Taconic Mountains of southwestern Massachusetts, is a 1.5-mile heavily trafficked trail leading to Bish Falls, the state's highest single-drop waterfall, which looms 59 feet. Historically, the falls area was first settled by Europeans in 1692, with the town of Mount Washington incorporated much later in 1779, and in 1924, Bish Falls State Park was officially established in an effort to protect the falls and surrounding woodlands. The park remains open to this day, offering a range of hikes, scenic viewpoints, prime fishing spots, and uniquely access points to the falls from both the Massachusetts and New York sides, with tale telling the New York route is just a bit easier. Over their many years, both the trail and park have long been surrounded by fables of inexplicable happenings, with the most popular tale claiming the falls take their name after a Mohican woman, Bish, who was accused of adultery, and whom, despite her pleas of innocence, was tied to a canoe and sent over the edge to meet her death. This legend furthers to claim that, just as Bish started to fall, a ring of butterflies appeared above her head, possibly signifying her innocence. That when attempts were made to retrieve her body, it was discovered it had disappeared, and that later, when her daughter White Swan failed to conceive a child, and when her husband, the village chief's son, took a new wife, resulting in her suicide by jumping from the very same cliffs, that her body, just like her mother's, had vanished into thin air. Those who have braved the trail, especially after dark, have reported disembodied voices, extreme cold spots, tribal drums, and the sounds of a woman crying and screaming that have seemed so real they've warranted several calls to the authorities. Chillingly, at the falls themselves, more than 25 deaths have occurred over the past century, some from drownings, others from accidental slips, and a majority bulk from mishaps experienced during rock climbing or intentional jumps. And in 2009 and again in 2010, AOL Travel actually listed the site as one of the most dangerous tourist attractions around. Near the falls, and namely at night, hikers have also reported orbs visible to the naked eye, and sightings of the manifestation of either Bish or White Swan beneath the cascade. Number 2. Ghost House Trail. Ghost House Trail, located within the 3,687-acre Big Ridge State Park in Union County, Tennessee, is a 1.2-mile loop ranging from easy to moderate in difficulty that comprises one segment of more than 15 total miles of trails. Historically, archaeological evidence shows signs of prehistoric life through the area, accompanied later by various native tribes, but by the 18th century, it's documented that this land was controlled primarily by the Cherokee. In 1761, the region was visited by a group of Long hunters followed closely through the 1770s and 80s by waves of settlers, and slowly, communities and town sites would grow. Through the 1920s, lobbying would prompt federal funding for a dam along the confluence of Clinch River and Cove Creek. In the early 1930s, 1930s, the Tennessee Valley Authority would begin purchasing land for the purpose of a dam, reservoir, and recreational zones. And in 1933, Norris Dam was completed, with Big Ridge established as one of 3 rec areas. Later, through the Great Depression, the Civilian Conservation Corps would set to work establishing a range of structures, trails, and other features on site. Today, Big Ridge is operated by the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation and boasts 19 rustic cabins, large group sites, 50 standard campsites, a meeting hall, and, as many a campfire tale tells, a range of paranormal infestations. Near Ghost House Trail, a plaque stands testament to the spot where settler Peter Graves, while out turkey hunting, was captured and scalped. And some stories tell that long ago, a young woman accused of practicing dark magics was hanged from a nearby tree by her own father. Their presences are said to remain along the trail, and those frequenting it have reported hearing their disturbing, disembodied screams, as well as of encounters with their full-bodied apparitions. Possibly the most famous story surrounding Ghost House, and also one that holds it true to its namesake, tells of the Hutchinson family, whose ruined house lies near, and whose head of household, Matson Hutchinson, is buried at Norton Cemetery right along the trail. As tale tells, in the 1800s, Matson's daughter, Mary, died from tuberculosis, sending the family into a downward spiral. Chillingly, years after the home's abandonment, those passing it begin telling of ghostly screams heard from within, of spectral forms sighted drifting about, and even of encounters with a phantom dog, believed to be the spirit of one that once belonged to the Hutchinsons, that's been known to chase those passing, only to disappear at the property line. Lastly, the ghost of Matson himself has been sighted roaming the cemetery, and also seemingly en route to his old homestead. Number 1. White Sands National Park. White Sands National Park, located between Otero and Doña Ana counties in New Mexico, is a 275 square mile stretch of desert on the Tularosa Basin that holds the impressive title of being the largest known gypsum dune field, and incidentally, that's recognized as one of the world's greatest natural wonders. Historically, archaeological evidence shows that from the last ice age and onward, early man utilized this area as a hunting space, primarily for ground sloth. Originally grass plains, the landscape was severely altered over time to form the dunes we know today. Around 700 years ago, Apache hunters would follow bison into the area and would establish their territory before the arrival of European settlers, after which, following a series of violent conflicts, the Apache were ultimately forced to leave. In 1647, a series of salt trails were established by Spanish colonists for the purpose of processing silver. Through the early 19th century, a number of farming communities were formed, and strangely, in the 1880s, a period of heavy rains would transform the basin back into grasslands for a time. In 1933, the expanse was officially dedicated by President Herbert Hoover as White Sands National Monument, and was later redesignated as a national park under President Donald Trump in 2019. Though the park remains open to this day, it is bordered by White Sands Missile Range and the Holloman Air Force Base, and, as odd as it might seem, actually has to shut down for times during missile tests. White Sands offers a range of charted trails and hikes, the option to roam off the beaten path, and, according to legend, its fair share of supernatural phenomena, with those exploring about reporting orbs and strange fogs that float with seeming sentience, constant electronic malfunctions and random battery death, and the feeling of being watched or followed by something unseen. The most popular story surrounding this expanse tells of how, in 1540, Spanish conquistador Hernando de Luna would leave behind his betrothed Manuela to travel with explorer Francisco Coronado in search of the 7 cities of Cibola, along with an infinite fortune in gold and jewels. Sadly, during their expedition, they were ambushed by an Apache war party, and though they fought valiantly, it said Luna sustained mortal injuries and died somewhere amongst the sands, swept up in the ever-changing dunes. This legend furthers to tell that Manuela, distraught, set out to find him and was never seen again. Manuela's restless spirit, dubbed the Ghost of the Great White Sands, or Pavla Blanca, is said to roam the park to this day, and usually manifests on the breeze at sunset in her flowing white wedding gown, calling out for her dearly beloved. This phenomenon is so common, it's warranted attention from several scientists and research groups, who've all concluded the illusion and sound is likely a result of wind picking up sand in just the right manner, though this explanation is heavily debated by those who have claimed to have stood in Manuela's presence. To this day, it's said that on almost every night, one can hear Pavla Blanca calling across the wastes, forever seeking the company of De Luna. Taking into consideration its fascinating history and coupling it with a range of purported hauntings and chilling paranormal activity, we felt White Sands National Park was the perfect choice as the most haunted hike in the United States. Thanks for tuning in for our second list of some of the most haunted hikes in the United States. If you enjoyed hearing our histories and ghost stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn notifications on. Throw us a like, and most importantly, share us with anyone you feel could use a good scare. We'll catch you all next time, if something else doesn't first.